Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have these really beautiful Mother's Day cards to share with you. So let's jump in. So I am still fairly sick, so bear with me as we go through this voiceover. I wanted to cut down some black cardstock. I'm going to use it as my background, but I also wanted a hot foil on it. So you're going to see here that I've cut down a sheet, 2 of which I'm going to cut down to be my background. So I've cut that down to be 1/8 of an inch smaller than my A2 base, which when scored is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I left the other 2 the full size of, a quarter of a sheet. And then I'm going to bring out some Glimmer hot foil. This is the matte gold. I love this because it matches perfectly with the gold cardstock that I'm going to use to go on top of those blooms that you saw. And then I also have a better press plate. They hot foil like a good hot darn. So I brought out my Spellbinders Better Press Plate. This is the Mother's and Father's Day sentiments, and I just cut down the foil that I needed to size. That's the quick trimmer, the foil quick trimmer I'm using. And I am going to make 2 cards. One of these is for my mom. If you guys didn't know, she loves yellow. So the scattered straw version of this card is for my mom. But I love pink and gold. And I've been kind of trying to make more than one card when I make cards, just because, well, first of all, I have a market coming up in October, end of October, beginning of November. It's the big Christmas market in town, and I want to have a good selection of cards for other people to choose from. And because, you already have all the supplies out, so I kind of figured making more than one is always kind of a good idea, unless it's something super tedious, like the card I made last week. But I'm going to run this through my Big Shot. I opt to use my Big Shot with hot foiling and the Better Press system. I just find that I have more control, so I don't use my switch for this. I will use my switch for all the other die cutting in this video, but I like to use my Big Shot for hot foiling and Better Press. I don't know, it's just, I don't want to break my switch. It's probably one of the biggest reasons. So I wasn't sure how this black cardstock was going to foil. I've never used it to foil before, but it turned out really great. So I'm pretty happy with the results. There is a matching die that goes with these sentiments, so I busted that out as well. And this is great because it gives you 2 Mother's Day and 2 Father's Day sentiments. I wanted 2 because I actually wanted the Happy Mother's Day specific sentiment, but it does give you, one of each sentiment. So you do get 4 sentiments from this set, which I thought was pretty great. And I just saved the other ones. I actually have the Father's Day ones in the same foil cardstock on a white background that I think I used on my mom's card last year. Because like I said, it cuts all 4 every time. So I did use this on mom's card last year, just with gold foil and a white background. But yeah, so I cut that out 2 times for the sentiment so that I could have the same sentiment for both cards. You could, of course, use the other one. The other one it doesn't feel as Mother's Day to me because it says Mom, thanks for everything. So it sounds almost like more of a thank you card, which there's nothing wrong with. I really wanted a specific Mother's Day card. So now I'm going to cut out the Spellbinders Magnolia Blooms die set, and I'm going to cut this out 6 times. I'm not going to show you cutting it out 6 times. I'm going to show you it once. But because I wanted to make 2 cards and I wanted 3 blooms per card, I am going to cut it out 6 times. And then I'm going to cut the detailed layer with my chrome base plate and this really pretty Tonic gold paper, which matches that foil stunningly. Now, I do have a little bit of a struggle with this die plate and the leaves. I don't know why. I always have. I have just found that if I go along with my pick tool and gently lift up the leaves, that works for me. I'm sure there are many other ways you could do this. Just so far, this has just been the easiest way I've found to do it. You just have to be a little bit patient, a little bit gentle. Otherwise, you can rip the cardstock. Because this is such a delicate die cut, there are very, very thin lines to it. And every once in a while, I do rip one. And then I just glue it back together and call it a day. But I've just found this is the easiest way for me to kind of get this die to separate. And then I just poked out all the little bits and set it aside. And of course I cut it 5 more times. And I'm not going to show you, but I did do that because I just find it easier to do it kind of an assembly line style. And then we're going to kind of get into building this card. So this card is kind of inspired by Janis Makula. She is the creator of this die. And if you guys have seen her work, she does these super beautiful like bold cards. She also has these really dark backgrounds, and I wanted to give it a go. I thought it would be kind of a fun thing to do, so this is kind of my version of that. A lot of the times I've seen her actually take a marker and color in her background. I just opted to go with black cardstock, but you could of course do either direction. But her cards are always stunning. I would be shocked if you don't know who she is, but if you don't know who she is, look her up. She's a phenomenal creator. She creates stunning work. But this was inspired by her designs. And I brought in scattered straw. I kind of wanted it to be a bit more of a muted yellow. My mom has all of her cards on the fridge, and I was over there recently and I was looking at the cards that I'd made her, and I really wanted to make something a bit different. So yellow being her favorite color, of course, I've gone in, with scattered straw. I've done a couple of different, or not scattered straw, sorry, squeezed lemonade, because that is my go-to yellow. And I've gone in and kind of made a few cards for her with that color palette, and I wanted it to just be a bit different. So I chose to go with scattered straw. And then I also made a spun sugar version just because pink and gold is one of my favorite combos, and I couldn't resist because I already had everything out, so why not make 2 cards? So this one will just be sold in the market, but I thought it was really pretty to kind of do a lighter pink as well, because you could of course go with picked raspberry and do a very vibrant color, but I wanted it to be a little more subtle. And I am blending with the tiny blending tool just because it gives me a little bit more control with how much color I put down. I tend to be heavy-handed, so this just gives me just that touch more control than the bigger blending tool gives me, because I'm trying to not go all the way to the white border that goes around the whole flower. I'm trying to kind of keep that color in the actual bloom part of this background, which is why you see me put the gold lay over top often, just to check how I've kind of got it lined up and where my color is sitting. And then once I was happy with it, I went in with my Nuvo Deluxe glue, and I'm just going to add that, to random areas on this gold piece and then adhere it down. I did bring in my little tin that holds my blending tools to kind of make sure that it adhered flat while it was drying. And you're going to see me do that here in a sec. You could try to use double-sided tape. The only thing that I feel that doesn't work is that you'd end up wasting so much of your double-sided tape. Because it's such a delicate and intricate design, you lose all the centerpieces, right? So I wouldn't, it would feel like, to me, I would feel like I was wasting a whole bunch of my tape. I mean, if you had a Xyron sticker maker that was large enough for this, or, I'm sure that there's micro dots or whatever. I'm sure there's many ways you could adhere this down. This is just my preferred way. I like liquid glue. I find that it gives me the wiggle room that I need to kind of adhere stuff how I want it. So that's just my comfort zone. That's where I go. But there's no right or wrong way here. Just do whatever works for you and adhere it however is easiest. This is just kind of my go-to. Nuvo Deluxe is by far my favorite liquid glue as well. I have been asked that several different times. I find that it's the easiest glue to use because it tends to not seep. Like if I'm building a book, say, like I'm making a journal, I find that it doesn't warp the pages when I use it, and that's really big to me. I've used other glues and I've had them kind of warp pages, and I don't really enjoy that, so I tend to reach for the Nuvo as my, glue of choice. So just because I've been asked that, I figured I'd answer that here while I'm using it. So I did adhere them all down, and then we're going to start getting into actually laying it out. And it did take me a minute to figure out how I wanted them to look. I think that's one of those things where it's just really trial and error. Once all of the flowers are, adhered and ready to go, it was really just kind of laying them out and seeing what looked the best. Now you can see these blooms, they're stunning. I don't think there's any wrong way to use this. I have used this die set so many times now. And every time it creates just these beautiful cards. Like, there's no wrong way to use a die set like this. I believe I've done like alcohol inks behind it. I've done ink blending. Like, there's so many ways. It's such a versatile die set, I think. And if you like flowers, this is a great way to go. I believe this is still available. This is an older die set. I think it came out in 2022. Don't quote me on that. But I have had it quite a while. Like, I've taught classes where I've used this die set. It's one of my favorite go-tos. And I just thought a bold version of this card would be really, really fun. But here you can see I kind of just lay out the flowers how I want them. I really want the gold leaves to be in there because I think that they're really stunning. And then I just kind of moving around until I feel like they kind of go together like a puzzle, and I'm happy with them. I know that there's going to be negative space with that black background, but that's perfectly okay. As you guys saw in the intro, I am going to add some pearls along there. If you've been with me for any length of time, you know that pearls are my go-to embellishment. I love them. I think that they add just a little bit of wow to every project. So I do lean that direction. And then, of course, we are going to bring in those Mother Day sentiments as well. I'm going to bring my trimmer in for this. You could use scissors if you prefer. I just kind of thought it was easier to use my trimmer just because there's so many layers of cardstock. And I did have to go back later and just glue little pieces down that maybe didn't get any glue when I originally adhered the gold layer on, just to make sure that they were secure and wouldn't lift off after the card was kind of built. But I think these cards turned out stunning. I'm really, really happy with how they look. And if you guys have seen any of Yana's stuff, I think that I honored her design really well with this because I think they turned out really, really pretty. So yeah, I'm just going to trim off all the excess. I am going to add some of these chopped off flowers on the inside of the card base. I do try to remember to do the card base. I don't always remember, to be honest with you, but I do try. And then I think that just adds a little something extra to the inside of the card that gives you just like a pop of wow. And I'll show you that at the end when I show off the cards in their full look. Now, I kind of thought that the sentiment was getting a little bit lost because it is a lot of black and gold. So I cut out the sentiments again 4 more times so that I could use 3 layers for each sentiment. And this just helped the sentiment hold itself a bit more from the background. You'll see here in a second when I put it back on the card. I just kind of felt like that gave it a little bit more oomph, for lack of a better word. I think it just helped the sentiment stand out a bit better. There's so many ways you could have done this. You could have used like foam squares and stuff, but some of it's very thin, so I felt like it was just easier to die cut the actual matte layer again and then just adhere it behind, and then that gives me like a thicker sentiment, which I think looks really pretty. And then here it just stands up a bit better against that black background. And then of course bringing in the pearls around it will also help, but I really like how that turned out. So I'm going to use some acrylic blocks just to hold this down. I chose to just glue it directly on the card. I didn't need anything extra because I already have all those layers, so I think that turned out really well. And then, yeah, I used an acrylic block to make sure it wouldn't shift around while it was adhering because there are multiple layers that it's trying to adhere to. And then once that's done, I'm going to adhere it directly onto the card base. I opted not to use any foam squares or anything like that. I thought that it would just work to be flat, just because I think there's already a lot of layers going on here, because I didn't think it needed any more dimension than it already had. So then we're just going to adhere them both down. I think that they turned out really pretty. And like I said, I'm going to add some of those extra flowers on the inside of the card. I thought that would be a good way to use them. And I mean, you could save them for other projects and attach them as well. I just kind of adhered a few and then set the other ones aside just in case. And then this is where I feel like you can't have enough pearls. Like I said, I love pearls. I think that they're one of the funnest embellishments you can add to a card design. So that's what I did. I think I added like 15 pearls on each card. I went a little bit excited there, but honestly, they make me smile and I don't feel good. So smiling is kind of a good thing. So I added a bunch across the card in the negative space. You don't have to go this crazy with them. I just, I can, so I did. There's no right or wrong here. I think it's really pretty even if you don't add the embellishments, although I think it does give it just a little bit more of a bit of a wow factor there. So That's kind of what I was thinking, and I love how they turned out. I can't wait to give this to my mom. I think she'll really enjoy it. She doesn't watch the channel, so I'm not worried about her seeing it beforehand. But yeah, so that is the card design I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm hoping to hit, 15,000 here on the upcoming. I'm getting closer and closer, but it's been a while, so I'm hoping to grow the channel if I can. And yeah, so leave me a like, leave me a comment, and tell me what you think about the flowers on the inside. I thought that was kind of a fun way to decorate a little bit. Just that little bit of pop of extra flower. I thought that was kind of neat. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.